Hello, this segment is about what it means to be a member of the State Board of Education. So I intend to provide you a high-level summary of the basic time commitments of being on the board. Board meetings are held throughout the state of Washington, sometimes in Spokane, sometimes in the Tri-Cities, and sometimes up and down the I-5 corridor. Most of the time commitments of a board are centered around those meetings, which occur every other month throughout the year. It is typical for the board to have 6 meetings, possibly 7 or 8 meetings if a special meeting of the board is needed for any particular reason. In addition to the board meetings themselves, which typically last 2 days, board members are often asked to attend community forums for the purposes of engaging community stakeholders and receiving feedback. Those community forum meetings usually happen either right before or right after board meetings. There are also occasionally stakeholder meetings that board members are asked to attend and represent the State Board of Ed at. Those decisions are made at the discretion of the board leadership and usually the board chair. And then there are occasional committees of the board where it might be that the whole board has asked a subgroup of members to delve deeply into a particular topic. In general, I would say the time commitment that is necessary for a member is to some extent scalable to personal interest, but there are, of course, minimum requirements associated with attending the meetings and reading the materials and preparing to act as a board member at these bi-monthly meetings. If you are a new board member, your term begins on the second Monday in January of the applicable year. There are a couple of rare exceptions to that, but that is the general rule. You will be asked to take an oath of office at your first meeting, and that oath will be administered by the chair of the board. And if you would like to get to know the members of the board, there is a in-depth roster of the board members available on the State Board of Education website where you can learn a little bit about the backgrounds of the board members. In advance of your first meeting, I would recommend that you spend some time with a few documents. The first would be the roster and the bylaws of the board. The roster provides detailed information not only about who's on the board, but how long they've been on the board and what positions they fill. The bylaws of the board, of course, outline the basic rules of engagement for the board in terms of establishing Robert's rules for procedures, establishing procedures for electing leadership, and generally establishing the means by which the board intends to go about its business. I would also recommend spending time with something we call the board norms document. The board norms are adopted by the board and establish collective expectations for board members in terms of how they engage with one another and engage with the public. An example from the board norms might be, how does somebody bring a new idea to the State Board of Education, or how does one request that a proposal be generated for the State Board of Education? So who is on the State Board of Education? The board is a 16-member board. 5 members are elected by school board members. So if you are a citizen who has been elected to a local school board throughout the state, you receive a ballot to elect somebody to the State Board of Education from your region. And there are 5 such people elected to the State Board of Education. There are also 7 members of the board who are appointed by the governor. Those people eventually receive Senate confirmation, but their term starts with the State Board immediately upon the appointment of the governor. The Superintendent of Public Instruction is also a member of the board. We have 1 member who is a representative of private schools in the state of Washington and appointed by the private schools. And finally, we have 2 student members who are by statute non-voting members of the board, but are very much a meaningful part of the board and often provide critical feedback reflecting the viewpoints of students in our system. That totals 16 members on the State Board of Education. And again, if you have any questions about the responsibilities of a board member, don't hesitate to ask.